Lily, a 2-year-old domestic short-hair cat. She is affectionate and snuggly, and she's looking for a home that will give her time to adapt to that new environment. She does need to be the only cat in the home. If you'd like to adopt Lily, it's animalhumanesociety.org. Thanks so much for joining us on this Tuesday. Hope to see you again tomorrow for the Fox 9 Morning News and back here for the Fox 9 Morning News at 11. Hope you enjoy this beautiful weather. Fox 9 All Day is next. I'll see you again soon.
Everybody, welcome to All Day Live. I'm Amy Hawker. We're really glad that you're here with us for the next couple of hours. A lot of live events to cover over the next few hours. We're going to start you, though, in Minneapolis, where there's a city council meeting that's going to be going on for probably a couple more hours at least. Right now, what you're hearing is this is discussion over extending that temporary pre-eviction notice from 30 to 60 days. They're hearing right now from community members. Let's listen in.
Talk about it. We've been moving our feet, getting out in the street. Oh, you gotta do more than just talk about it. Will you take a stand? We know you can. Will you take a stand? We know you can.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next speaker is Vivian Bergstead.
Hi, my name is Vivian Bergstead, and I live in Ward 1, and I'm a homeowner there. And I'm really impressed with you today. I've never been in a meeting before, and I've been listening to what you've been saying, and I like how much thought you put in all of what you're doing, and that was just a personal comment from me. And I'm hoping that you will join us in this song, and I'm hoping that you will stand up for. I'm hoping you'll help us help our neighbors stay safe. And so, no one is getting left behind this time. No one is getting left behind. No one is.
Clearly, you can see it's buffering there. We'll see if we can pop back in. So again, if you're just joining us, what's happening is, let's go back. No, maybe not.
Okay,
let's listen.
No one is getting left behind. No one is getting left behind this time. We'll get there together or never get there at all. We'll get there together or never get there at all. We'll get there together or never get there at all. Thank you. Thank you.
Next is Carla Henderson.
Good morning, Chair Chowdhury and members of the committee. My name is Carla Henderson, and I have the privilege and honor to serve as President and CEO of Project for Pride in Living, or PPL. We are a Twin Cities-based nonprofit with 53 years of impact, and we own and operate more than 1,800 units of affordable housing across the Twin Cities. Our mission is simple: to help individuals and families remain stably housed. While we deeply respect the intention behind the proposal, our experience shows that early intervention, not delayed action, is what prevents displacement. By implementing a policy that further delays eviction notice, people will lose their homes. Across our portfolio, we see a clear pattern. Once a household is 2 months behind on rent, the likelihood of catching up drops sharply, even with rental assistance. This was evident after the pandemic-era moratorium. When intervention was delayed, families fell further behind and were way less likely to remain housed. This is why we rely on early contact, early conversation, and early connection to resources, which has helped more than 90% of households in our portfolio stay housed. The current 30-day notice is often the moment when residents reach out, begin problem solving, and engage with staff. The notice residents receive also includes valuable information about available rental assistance and support. These are resources families need early, not later. In our Hennepin County portfolio, the average timeline from missed payment to an eviction order is already 89 days. Adding another 30 days only pushes families deeper into debt. Thank you for your time, your leadership, and your continued commitment to housing stability in Minneapolis.
Next is Alicia Leonard.
Good morning. My name is Alicia Leonard, representing Common Bond Communities as the Vice President of their services team. For more than 5.5 decades, Common Bond has provided affordable housing alongside supportive services that help residents achieve long-term housing stability. In Minneapolis, we serve just under 1,500 households across 18 housing communities, many of whom face significant barriers to maintaining that housing. Eviction prevention has always been at the core of our mission. We learned some very important lessons the last time there was an eviction moratorium back in after COVID-19. And we learned one thing very clearly, that time alone does not prevent eviction. Financial support does. When rent relief was available, households stabilized. When timelines alone were extended without accompanying financial assistance, residents accumulated larger and larger debts that became very difficult, sometimes nearly impossible to resolve. That is why we believe that the most critical focus, possibly even more important than adjusting timelines, is ensuring adequate, accessible, and flexible emergency financial assistance that would build upon the initial $1 million investment that this council has already passed, which we're very grateful to see that's already happened. And in speaking with the services team at Common Bond about this proposal, a couple concerns came up based on the experiences that they have with residents. First, that a longer notice period typically allows that rent balance to continue to grow. And so for households that have experienced job loss or reduced income, an additional month's month of unpaid rent can simply push that balance beyond what may be realistically recoverable. Second, in our experience, we're most effective partnering with residents when we're able to partner with that resident right away to be able to access assistance, resources, and when those resources are flexible, and when we're able to make those connections as early in the process as possible. And so in closing, Common Bond fully supports any policy that protects residents, prevents displacement, and promotes long-term housing stability. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And then I'll just make a request.
We're going to continue to listen here on our end to what we're hearing. Again, it's a discussing the extension of a temporary pre-eviction notice from 30 to 60 days amid the Operation Metro Surge. There were concerns over people who weren't able to stay in their homes because they weren't going to work or for other reasons. So that is what they're discussing. We're going to keep an eye on Minneapolis City Council because after, I believe, 1 o'clock or so, they're going to come back and they are going to talk about the fallout from Operation Metro Surge, specifically as it relates to the Minneapolis Police Department. So we want to hear about that as well. And I understand we're going to probably hear from Hennepin County to talk about that. A lot going on at the Minneapolis City Council today. So we're going to keep an eye on that and bring you back into it. A couple more quick headlines here that we wanted to bring to your attention. We have been watching something unfold in federal court this morning that really may be unprecedented. The U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, which is the state's top federal prosecutor, has been called to testify today for defying a judge's order. So there's a federal judge here in Minnesota that wants to know why U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen's office has yet to comply with an order to return property that ICE had taken away from people who were unlawfully detained. We also expect a packed courtroom as other immigration officials representing the plaintiffs may be there as well. It's a combined hearing representing 28 different cases where that judge says items were never returned after people were released from custody. We're talking about cash, cell phones, jewelry, passports, work permits, immigration documents. Our Paul Bloom has been following this story in court today. I don't believe cameras are allowed. I think it's sketch artists, but he'll be joining us a little bit later with what happened there and some of those developments. A lot of eyes on that today. Also, a lot of eyes on this on the national scale. Taking you to Washington, D.C., Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem has been testifying on Capitol Hill all morning. It's the Senate Judiciary Committee asking her specifically about how she and her department have handled Operation Metro Surge. The last time we heard from Secretary Noem in this way at Congress was right after the deaths of Renee Good and Alex Preddy in Minneapolis. Haven't heard anything since then on Capitol Hill. So here is a clip of, I believe it's the Secretary Noem and Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, where he is asking her about the use of the term a domestic terrorist. Let's listen.
Secretary Noem, the nation has watched horrified as immigration agents killed Renee Good, Alex Preddy. In Chicago, one of your Border Patrol agents shot Marimor Martinez 5 times after ramming her car. You and your agency rushed to brand these victims as, quote, domestic terrorist. We have ample video evidence and eyewitness testimony proving you are wrong. Your statements caused immeasurable pain to these families. Let me give you an opportunity to do the right thing. Do you retract these statements identifying these individuals as domestic terrorists?
You know, Senator Dermott, when we have these situations happen, we always offer our condolences to those families, and I offer mine as well. These are tragic situations, and I can't imagine what these families go through in losing a loved one. What I will say is we always work to provide the American people with as much information as possible, that we're relying on reports from the ground and from agents that are there, and working to be transparent, and we'll continue to do all that we can to provide the accurate information and the facts to people as we can.
Where did you get that information? In a recent hearing before the HISGAC committee, CBP and ICE officials testified under oath that their agencies did not inform you that Preddy was a domestic terrorist during that hearing, stated during that hearing.
I was getting reports from the ground from agents at the scene, and I would say that it was a chaotic scene, as you've seen in Minneapolis and St. Paul, as immigration enforcement has gone forward, and we've worked at targeting the worst of the worst, that many times our agents have been faced with violent
the victims of
protesters.
That violence domestic terrorists as a way to calm the scene?
These violent terrorists have put them in a situation where it's unprecedented what these agents have faced. So that situation on the ground that day was chaotic, and it was something that they were transpiring and sharing information
brand them as
with
domestic
us.
Terrorists? Can you explain why you decided to brand these victims that we all saw on video, who were out protesting the activities of your agency and were killed as a result of it? How did you think that calling them domestic terrorists at that scene was somehow going to calm the situation?
You know, Senator, we are working in those situations where there's a tragic loss of life, and that there is something that our agents are involved in, that we continue to deliver information.
Is it so hard to say you were wrong?
We continue, as these investigations continue to go, we will provide, I absolutely strive to provide factual information, and we'll continue to do that.
And when you fail, do you admit it publicly?
Absolutely. We always know that there's room for...
All right, and I just checked. It looks like Kristi Noem is still testifying at this hour, so we'll continue to follow that for you as well. Really quickly, the very latest on Iran. We have a couple of updates for you. Notice Fox News' Trey Yingst, who is there in the Middle East, is reporting that just a few hours ago, Israel struck the gathering of the Iranian Supreme Council where, according to Trey Yanks, they were gathering to vote on a new supreme leader. So again, Israel, the report is that Israel struck that site where they were gathering. Meantime, the U.S. has shut down its embassies in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. We know that Iran continues to retaliate with drone strikes across the Middle East. And then we are also seeing the markets react. Stock futures plunged. Energy prices have gone up. You may have seen gas prices went up by about 11 cents on average. And then thousands of travelers, as we know, are still stuck in limbo right now. So that's the very latest on the situation in Iran. We're going to take a quick break. And before we do, we're going to check the weather with meteorologist Keith Marlin. Not a lot to talk about. It's pretty great out there if you like warm weather in early March. And we'll come on back with much more, including a lot of live events here on All Day Live. Stay with us.
We started the day off above freezing. Yeah, so many of us didn't even freeze up last night. A lot of mid-30s overnight last night. We have extra cloud cover and even some drizzle and light rain in southern Minnesota. We didn't see much in the way of icy drizzle, though, as most folks, when they had that roll by, stayed again above freezing. Now we've broken out into more and more sunshine, and we continue that for the better part of our afternoon as we have a really nice day. A lot of upper 40s and 50-degree temperatures. Some of us trying to get into the 50-plussers department. Hey, I'm a 50-plusser. I like it. As we go on out the door for us into the overnight, some patchy cloud cover hangs out with us. We go down to temperatures that'll stay above freezing. And then as we go into the day tomorrow, some good sunshine, the midweek mellow, highs in the middle 50s. Hey, I'm in the middle 50s. And then we continue that trend into the day on Thursday with extra cloud cover. Now, as we head on into Thursday night and into Friday, some light rain showers start to roll our way. We might see some showers out west before midnight. Most of us wait until after midnight and then into the day on Friday. But we keep those 50s going. The forecast looks like this, then clearing out, warmer for the afternoon. High around 50. The metro, 51, 52. That's looking more and more likely as we continue the warm up. Quiet, mild tonight at 35, patchy clouds. And then for tomorrow, the midweek mellow grabs hold, 20 degrees above average. Plenty of gorgeous sunshine as those temperatures, they just rise on up. As we look ahead, patchy cloud cover, mid-50s continue into Thursday. Extra clouds, rain showers, maybe some isolated weak thunder on Friday at 57. And if there's enough gumption, we'll wrap around some moisture, bring in some mixy flakes for some of us into Saturday morning. Otherwise, partly sunny, slightly cooler in the upper 40s. And then, yeah, the big push before we start to adjust those temperatures back to reality into Sunday and Monday. We warm up to the upper 50s to near 60 into Sunday and Monday proper. It's optimistic, but it's not out of reach that we go on into those temperatures that way. I like to be optimistic about those as we push that way. If I had an 8-day forecast, we'd keep the 50s alive. And if I had a 9-day forecast, well, seasonable weather waits us by the middle of next week. Fox.
Earth.
All right, we want to take you live to Capitol Hill, where Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is taking questions from the Senate Judiciary Committee. A lot of different topics here. They're kind of going back and forth. Right now, I think it's eliminating FEMA is what they're talking about, and then, of course, immigration operations across the country. Let's just listen in here for a minute.
60 different emergency disasters, 41 major disasters, and that they have overwhelmingly responded and taken care of American citizens and removed the politicization that Joe Biden put into the agency. I'm proud of the work that FEMA has done. They've deployed dollars immediately and responded and partnered with other agencies to save people, such as the Coast Guard and CBP in the flooding situations in Texas, and have continued to make sure that while local emergencies are executed at the local level, that they're managed by states and that the federal government is there to support.
The Department of Homeland Security shutdown is now in its third week. It should come as no surprise that the Democrats opposed enforcement of our immigration laws. They did so for 4 years when they controlled the White House. Just last week, they refused to stand and support President Trump's call to protect American people during the State of the Union. But Homeland Security includes other critical entities like Secret Service, FEMA, TSA, Coast Guard that Democrats refuse to fund and whose workers aren't getting paid. The primary responsibility of the federal government is to keep the American people safe, so it's critical that Democrats fund DHS in the end of this reckless political exercise. The hearing record will remain open for 1 week. Members should get their questions to the secretary at the end of the week. My expectation is that the department will answer the committee's questions for the record. Senator Noem, Secretary Noem, Senator Cruz is going to adjourn this meeting.
Okay.
I'm going to go to another meeting. I thank you for your appearance today. Senator Cruz.
You.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Madam Secretary.
Yes, hi, Senator.
Congratulations on a grueling morning. I am the last thing between you and returning to work. Let me start by saying thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for accepting the charge to protect this nation at a time of enormous peril and at a time, sadly, of far too much politicization and demonization of the Department of Homeland Security. Department of Homeland Security was founded in the wake of the September 11th attacks, after nearly 3,000 Americans were murdered on our soil. It exists because we learned at terrible cost that vigilance is not optional. And the success of vigilance is quiet and often ignored. It is measured not in headlines, but the absence of them. The flights that land safely, the plots that never materialize, the threats that are intercepted before they reach our communities. Like sentinels standing watch at the walls of a city, the men and women of DHS guard the homeland day and night with extraordinary dedication and professionalism. And yet, over the past 18 days, Democrats have shut down the very department tasked with that mission, weaponizing the budget process to advance political disagreements. The same voices that once called to abolish ICE and defund the police have now left the sentinels unsupported and the watchtower dark. That is what the Democrat shutdown has done. Let's get to the truth. For the American people, this oversight hearing is about three things: where we were, what has been accomplished, and where we need to go next. Let's start with where we were. Secretary Noem, when you walked into DHS, what was the state of operational control at the southern border that you inherited?
There was no operational control. In fact, our Border Patrol agents and federal officers were being forced to help facilitate the invasion of dangerous criminals and aliens into our country.
Were daily encounters at or near historic highs?
Yes, they absolutely were at historic highs. That's the worst we've ever seen.
Between 2021 and 2024, the Biden administration released more than 13 million illegal aliens into this country after encountering them at the southern border. Is that correct?
Yes, that we know of. There could be millions more.
DHS data reflects during this period of mass releases into the interior, crimes committed by foreign nationals included at least 15,000 homicides and more than 20,000 sexual assaults. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And I will say, these numbers are not abstractions. And I will say to all the Angel families here, thank you for being here. Thank you for holding the photographs of your children, of your spouses, of your parents, of your brothers and sisters who should be with you. Names like Jocelyn Nungary and Laken Riley and Rachel Marin. Jocelyn, just 12 years old, was killed just miles from my house. Raped and murdered by 2 Venezuelan gang members that the United States government had apprehended and then released. And when they were released, they traveled to Houston, Texas, and they kidnapped a 12-year-old girl and raped and murdered her. In your time at DHS, has anyone in the leadership of the previous administration explained why the hell they let so many violent criminals free in our country?
No, they haven't. In fact, under the Biden administration and Mayorkas's leadership, they closed the victim's office at ICE, the Voices office that would help families that suffered a loss like Jocelyn's family and Laken's family and Rachel's family. They had no resources, no way to track court appearances or to get counseling services, no support whatsoever. They purposely closed that down to punish these families even more.
So it wasn't just murderers and rapists that were being released in this country. The open border under the Democrats also became a pipeline for poison, killing our children. Secretary Noem, when you took office, is it correct that fentanyl was the leading cause of death for Americans between the age of 18 and 45?
That's correct.
Was the volume of fentanyl crossing our southern border at or near record levels?
Yes, it was.
And would you agree that when operational control collapses, cartels exploit that chaos?
They exploit it and they become enriched from it.
So now let's talk about what has been accomplished under President Trump's leadership. Under President Trump's leadership, we have had 0 illegal aliens released for 10 straight months. Is that correct?
That is correct.
In President Trump's first year back in office, how many illegal aliens have left the United States?
2.5 million have left voluntarily, and we have arrested, detained, and removed close to 700,000 now.
And how many known or suspected terrorists have been removed?
We have over 1,500 now today that have been apprehended and are being brought to justice.
In the first 100 days of the second Trump administration, is it correct that daily border encounters decreased by approximately 93%?
Yes, that is correct.
That encounters with gotaways, those who are escaping apprehension, decreased by roughly 95%?
That is correct.
And that illegal crossings overall fell by 99%?
That is correct.
And how much in illegal drugs are we interdicting at the border?
Well, fentanyl has dropped by 56% in just the last year, from 2024, where there was historic highs coming into the country, to historic lows in 2025 under President Trump's leadership.
Okay, we are going to take a break from this hearing on Capitol Hill, the Senate Judiciary Committee, and we are going to keep listening to that. But also, when we come back, we have some live events that we want to take you to in St. Paul at the state capitol, including one that really caught our attention and may be interesting to you as well. There is a bill to propose a ban on the sale of dogs and cats from pet stores. And there's an argument to not do that on the other side that's very interesting. So we hope to bring that to you here, plus much more on All Day Live when we return.
This
check Paul's, I'll check Paul's social media. Hi, everybody. Thanks for getting back to us here on All Day Live as we work through some live events that are happening right now. A couple of things starting here at 12:30 that we're getting ready for. One of them is going to be, the screen next to me is the Senate Commerce Committee. This is the one I was just talking about right before break, where there's a bill that is prohibiting the sale of dogs and cats at pet stores. And one of the most interesting things about this, as I took a look at some of the people who are going to be testifying or giving a letter on behalf of their position, essentially, Pet Advocacy Network is a group that says California has already done this, and they say it was actually a disaster. They say that there was an LA Times investigation that showed a 350% increase in puppy scams, more unhealthy pets on the market, and of course selling, in parking lots and kind of in the shadows. So that's the opposition to this, but there's a lot more on the agenda that's kind of in support of this. So we're going to make sure that we bring that to you when that gets going. Ryan will let me know. And then also we have a couple of other hearings that we're watching at this time. There is a Senate Housing and Homelessness Prevention Committee. And the one thing that stuck out to us that's going to be happening here is Senator Zainab Mohammed from, I believe, St. Louis Park is proposing a constitutional amendment to increase the sales tax, so the state sales tax, by 3/8 of 1%. So it would go up by 3/8 of 1%. And then her bill wants to use those funds for housing purposes. I did It looks like they're getting going in one of them. And then the other box that we're watching is the Senate Labor Committee. This is about stay or pay when an employer brings you in and they pay for the hiring of you, whether that's hotels or flights or meals or whatever. If you don't stay for a certain amount of time, sometimes they put a provision in where they can actually make you pay that money back. There's a bill that says we don't want that to happen anymore. So that's the other piece that we're watching on the other corner. Right? Okay, let's listen to the House. Listen in on housing. I don't believe we're getting quite to the constitutional amendment yet, but let's just listen.
Wealth building and retirement opportunities for everyone. However, this crisis is not without solutions. We know how to solve the problem. We need to build more types of housing at all price points in all places. A key factor in making this possible is reforming burdensome land use and zoning regulations, and we will have a bill for that, which I hope to present in the State and Local Government Committee soon. In today's committee hearing, we'll first hear an economic research overview about the connection between housing supply and market affordability. Then we'll take a tour together through 3 different types of policy tools that can be used to fuel more housing supply: appropriation bonds, tax credits, and dedicated sustained revenue. These approaches are more transformational changes are necessary to develop the housing supply that our communities need to thrive. With that, I'd like to welcome Libby Starling from the Federal Reserve Bank of Minnesota to the committee. Ms. Starling, please introduce yourself as you get settled at the table and begin your informational presentation when you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Libby Starling. I am a Senior Community Development Advisor with the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis. And as the Chair indicated, I'll be speaking about some of our research on housing supply and affordability. There we are. So speaking about how housing supply affects housing affordability. So before I begin, I do need to note that the views expressed here are mine and mine alone and do not represent the Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis or the Federal Reserve System. We are one of the 12 reserve banks that exist across the country. The 9th Federal Reserve District, it includes Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, northwestern Wisconsin, and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. And in our work, we spend time engaging on what various challenges are. I lead our work in the area of housing affordability, which nests inside the dual mandate of the Federal Reserve System overall. So in conversations about the Federal Reserve, the U.S. Congress has given the Federal Reserve System 2 primary goals: price stability, a low and stable rate of inflation, and maximum employment. Housing is critical to both of these. Housing is the largest item in inflation calculations and in most household budgets. And then thinking about maximum employment.
Okay, so we are listening to the Minneapolis Fed kind of laying out an overview of housing in the area, and we'll listen in because we want to get to some stuff a little bit later that could impact the sales tax amount here in Minnesota. But we do want to just break in here because just watching what Paul Bloom is telling us via Twitter, Paul is covering a story that we've been watching unfold in federal court this morning, and when I was talking to him yesterday, he really felt like this was maybe unprecedented. So the U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Daniel Rosen, that's the state's top federal prosecutor, was called to federal court to testify today for defying a judge's order. Basically, this judge is saying that when people have been detained by ICE, sometimes their property has been taken from them, and then when they are released, they're not getting that property back. So I'm just going to read kind of verbatim here what Paul's thread on Twitter. If you follow him at @PaulBloom_Fox9, you can also follow along. But tensions rising. Paul says U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen is in federal court defending his office and ICE from potential civil and/or criminal contempt findings for violating court orders in 20-plus cases, specifically regarding the return of personal property to previously detained immigrants. So that's the setup. In a stunning moment, this was 1 hour ago, Judge Jeffrey Bryan to U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen, quote, "I have not ruled out the consequence of imprisonment," end quote. Judge says it's very unlikely and he doesn't want to do it, but all outcomes on the table if he finds contempt today. Bryan explained, and it continues, Judge Bryan and U.S. Attorney Rosen have been engaged in a testy back and forth, according to Paul, as they outline arguments for today's hearing. That's the first 20 minutes or so. Rosen says the government will stipulate that in 2 of the 20-plus cases, ICE believes that the detainee's property has been lost. Okay, so then recess. Looks like Paul says Judge Bryan is giving government lawyers time to meet with the 20-plus immigration attorneys in the courtroom to figure out which cases are now resolved, and then those would be removed from further proceedings today. Judge Bryan acknowledging the testy and frosty start to these proceedings. Let's see, U.S. Attorney Daniel Rosen, Civil Division Chief, continue to meet immigration attorneys in the courtroom as well to discuss, again, which cases. So they want to focus in on the ones that are unresolved, the ones where the property has not yet been returned to the people who now have been released, who were detained and have been released. Let's see, Judge Bryan says he expects to take sworn testimony today. Let's see. Okay. All right. I'll leave it there. So that's according to our Paul Bloom, who is following these proceedings very, very closely. Hopefully Paul can join us a little bit later. We'll see how the schedule slides down here. But something that, we really haven't seen here. I think Paul believes that this may be unprecedented to have this federal judge call in the top federal prosecutor in the state to answer to these allegations and to be threatened with criminal contempt of court, which, according to the judge, I have not ruled out the consequence of imprisonment. So very interesting developments. We'll continue to follow that for you. One other thing here, we want to try to get to something that happened this morning. Do you know what Waymo cars are? Those are those driverless cars, that company. You've seen them probably in California as a state that's using them most widely right now. Well, they've been testing things out in the metro. I don't know if you've seen this at all, but since this past fall, they've been testing them with a driver in them, trying to expand them across the country. Well, some here in Minnesota are basically saying, not so fast. We need to slow our roll here. There was a group of rideshare drivers and lawmakers who got together this morning. And this is prior to some scheduled hearings that are happening later this afternoon at the state capitol. And they laid out what they believe are some risks of Waymo in Minnesota. DFL Senator Erin May Quaid is proposing this bill that would basically prohibit companies like Waymo to operate in Minnesota at least until a permit process is established. So here's a bit of what she had to say just a short time ago.
This year, the legislature has 2 versions of what future autonomous vehicles could look like. On one hand, we could hand over the keys to a massive corporation with few to no guardrails. And on the other, a bill authored by myself and Representative Spencer Murrah, we can make sure Minnesotans have a say in how companies like Waymo affect our streets and our economies. The bill that Waymo's lawyers wrote to let Waymo certify its own safety with no way to take a car off the street if it hurts someone, damages property, or breaks laws in Minnesota is not good. I refuse to accept an autonomous car that can commit crimes with no accountability. When someone does get hurt, and they will, because it has happened in other states, we need a clear path to hold corporations accountable for the way they design and operate their technology. Our legislation would establish an independent advisory board and require a comprehensive study so we can evaluate what autonomous vehicle deployment would actually mean for our state, not just in theory, but in practice. Second, more than 100,000 Minnesotans have professional driving jobs. This could be truck drivers, delivery drivers, rideshare, or couriers. And they are sounding the alarm for their industry. The companies pushing this technology want us to think these are fully autonomous vehicles, and they're not. Waymo's executives have told Congress that they have workers, some in other countries, who make driving decisions when the algorithm fails. So there are people who may or may not be in the U.S., who may or may not have U.S.-based driver's licenses, operating cars that are supposed to be self-driving. We cannot let this unregulated industry turn into an unregulated monopoly that puts tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Minnesotans out of work with no plan for the future. Our bill requires an independent economic analysis so we can understand and plan for the ripple effects on families, small businesses, and local economies. This is not about whether the technology will advance or not. It's about how we guide those advancements so peoples, workers, children, and families aren't casualties in the name of progress. Our bill ensures that innovation works for Minnesotans, for our safety, for their responsibility, and that they have accountability from day one.
We are increasingly being asked to accept the highly controversial arrival of commercial autonomous vehicles as inevitable. but important questions remain unanswered. Who will benefit from this technology and who will carry the risks? Before we allow large autonomous vehicle companies to operate freely and generate profit using Minnesota's public infrastructure, we owe Minnesotans clear answers. You will hear bills this week in the House saying we should just let these vehicles and these companies run freely and just have industry regulate itself. But we believe that Minnesotans simply want some common sense steps to ensure the safety and security of our state. Minnesota has always embraced innovation, but innovation must come with transparency, accountability, and most importantly, public participation. This legislation creates a structured process to study the impacts of commercial autonomous vehicles through independent research and public hearings, ensuring that decisions about our roads are made by Minnesotans and not dictated solely by private companies.
All right, so that was earlier this morning, and we're going to be checking in with our Paul Bloom here as the court is in recess and some big developments in federal court. But also want to let you know about some of the other things that we're keeping an eye on right now in the Senate Labor. There's a Senate Labor Committee that's talking about what's called stay or pay, which is basically a bill that would make it illegal for an employer to force an employee to pay back money that they spent on hiring them if the employee leaves before a certain time frame. Sometimes that's built into contracts or agreements. So there's the bill that would get rid of that. Also, another big one that we're watching that we hope to listen in on involves pet stores in Minnesota, and a bill that would make it, would basically prohibit the sale of dogs and cats from pet stores in Minnesota. So we'll take you there when that gets going as well. Our Paul Bloom's kind of getting set up here in between during this recess, and we'll check in with him. We'll take a quick break, and we'll do that when we come back. Some big headlines unfolding here in federal court involving the U.S. Attorney. We'll be right back here on All Day Live.
To everyone
Welcome back to All Day Live. We want to take you live to St. Paul, where a packed federal courtroom for a, I guess, unprecedented hearing today. Our Paul Bloom has been following this. Paul, yeah, bring us. Can you hear me, Paul? I'm not sure. Paul,
yeah, Amy, good afternoon to you. Unfortunately, I don't hear your questions directly. In fact, I'm only hearing myself. talk back. So I'm sure I have some issues with my connection. But let me just give you a quick update, as I assume you just want kind of an update from the courthouse today. We're in downtown St. Paul, U.S. District Courthouse, for really an extraordinary hearing. We have some 24 cases, at least it started out, 24 cases in front of a U.S. District Court judge, Jeffrey Bryan. He's called these cases as one, where he feels there have been violations by the government, by ICE, by the U.S. Attorney's Office, in a very specific issue related to all the habeas civil litigation connected to Operation Metro Surge, and that is the return of property to detained immigrants who were ordered released, and they were ordered released with all their property that they were arrested with. So think paperwork, work permits, cell phones, car keys. And in all of these cases, the judge had suspected or attorneys had made stipulations that immigrants were not given their property upon their release. And so he called this contempt hearing today, brought in all these immigration attorneys, 20 plus cases. He also required Daniel Rosen, the U.S. attorney. He required the civil division chief of that office, U.S. Attorney's Office, David Fuller, and also a top, at least regional immigration official to come here and testify and explain why they should not be held in contempt for violating court orders. It was a testy, it was a feisty beginning. Daniel Rosen very much on the defensive as the hearing got underway, discussing how this would play out and the threat of contempt. And Judge Bryan was frank with the U.S. attorney that civil contempt, where you might be fined, it's called coercive contempt, where you fine the parties to make it a priority that they follow court orders, or the more serious criminal contempt finding, which would put people behind bars, government officials in custody. And the judge told Daniel Rosen that imprisonment remained on the table today. Criminal contempt, if he were to find it at the end of the day with testimony to be taken, that criminal contempt remained on the table. He said he doesn't want to do it. He hopes he doesn't have to do it. My gut would be we don't end up there, but it's certainly on the table and sets the scene for this afternoon. We're in a lunch recess at the Minute Amy. We'll come back at 1:30. I can tell you that about half of the cases that began at 28, maybe even more than half, we may be down to about, 10 cases that are in conflict where we're not sure if both sides agree that property has been returned. We know for sure the government is acknowledging in 2 of the cases they have lost the immigrant, the detained immigrant, the individual's property. So 2 cases will remain outstanding at least as we go into the afternoon. I know there are several others. So we'll have to see what happens. We're expecting a government official to be sworn in to explain what is going on with the lost property, with these items. Very important items in some cases, passports, driver's license, work permits that are very hard to replace, and that frankly an individual who is released from custody needs to function in their daily lives. So that is what is happening here. Again, we're on recess until about 1:30 this afternoon, and we'll have to see what happens. But really a remarkable set of circumstances this morning. More than 24 cases called at once. The courtroom was absolutely packed with immigration attorneys, government attorneys. Daniel Rosen, the U.S. attorney, in the courtroom to defend his office, to defend ICE, to defend the Trump administration against the threat of criminal contempt, potentially. Civil contempt, criminal contempt, both remain on the table as we sort of now get into witness testimony. All morning was spent on sort of the stipulations and what remains the issues and laying the groundwork for this afternoon's proceedings.
All right, Paul, thank you. We'll check back in with you here in a little while. Appreciate a lot going on there in federal court. We want to take you now back to the state capitol also in St. Paul, where there is a Senate Labor Committee that's happening. This is a stay or pay ban that I was talking about a little bit earlier, a bill that would make it illegal for an employer to force an employee to pay back money that was spent on hiring them if that employee leaves before an agreed upon time. So let's listen in.
Available. While the amendment seems to contemplate some exceptions, it doesn't go nearly far enough. Industries across Minnesota's diverse economy are experiencing several troubling trends, including high costs and steep increases in regulation and business mandates on workplaces that are already heavily regulated in Minnesota. Minnesota's employers and employees are counting on lawmakers to work toward an agenda for economic growth, making Minnesota's economy stronger, more vibrant, and more viable. Instead of reducing costs or making it easier for Minnesota businesses to remain competitive, this bill takes the opposite approach. Balance is necessary to protect public interest and promote economic growth. The Chamber is looking forward to working with members of this committee in a bipartisan fashion to pursue solutions that are reasonable, that strengthen the economy, keep costs manageable, and reduces barriers and other burdens undermining growth. Because this bill would impede Minnesota businesses and our competitiveness, we respectfully encourage a no vote on it. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next, we have Dalton Danielson. Welcome. If you would please introduce yourself for the record and proceed with your testimony.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Chair McHugh and members, my name is Dalton Danielson, Fiscal Policy Director for the Minnesota Business Partnership. The Minnesota Business Partnership is an association of CEOs and senior executives from Minnesota's most innovative and respected large companies. The partnership represents regional, state, and global leaders in healthcare, med tech, agriculture, manufacturing, and more. Altogether, our member companies employ 1 out of every 6 Minnesotans. The Minnesota Business Partnership urges members to oppose Senate File 2533 as it stands now and consider the potential ramifications it has on Minnesota's workforce. As it stands now, amended by the A4, this bill would undermine recruitment, training, and advancement opportunities for Minnesota workers by removing a tool employers use to make long-term investments in people and their careers. Right now, Minnesota employers compete nationally and globally for talent. To attract workers, especially into high-skill, high-demand roles, employers often front the cost of training, certifications, onboarding, and even relocation. These investments can take months or years to realize. Senate File 2533 broadly prohibits and penalizes stay-or-pay arrangements tied to those tangible investments, even when they are transparent, limited in purpose, time, and mutually agreed upon. The result of this legislation will not be more opportunity, it will be less. When employers cannot reasonably protect an investment in training, they respond by reducing access to upfront training and potentially hiring only fully credentialed candidates or shifting opportunities out of state. This disproportionately harms entry-level workers, career changers, and workers seeking advancements who rely on this employer-sponsored training to move up. This bill also risks slowing internal advancement. Many leadership pipelines depend on rotational programs, apprenticeships, and advanced technical training or education. If those investments carry uncompensated risk, employers may begin to narrow access, again, limiting upward mobility for the very workers this bill seeks to protect. To conclude, a one-size-fits-all prohibition will make Minnesota less competitive and reduce pathways into good jobs or new opportunities. Chair McHugh and committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much for your testimony. I believe also because the subject of apprenticeship type issues was just brought up, that we do have Chris De La Forest here, and doesn't need to offer any testimony, but is going to be here if we want to discuss that or have questions, more questions about how this provision would affect registered apprenticeships. But with that, I would like to turn it back over to the lead author of the bill, Senator Mann. Do you have any other comments that you'd like to offer us before we have some discussion and questions?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just a couple things. Certification programs, retention bonuses, employee loans, moving costs, everything that we heard as opposition. If you look at the amendment and those things fit under subdivision 4, none of that is prohibited. So those are very much not what the bill is doing. And then I just found it really interesting that there was testimony that said, despite everything you've heard today, these agreements are mutually beneficial. Well, I think because of what you heard today, we now know that these agreements are not mutually beneficial. That's all.
Thank you very much, Senator. Members, questions or discussion? Yes, Senator Dornick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I guess I'd like to hear the path of the bill. I'm assuming it has to go to Judiciary.
All right, we are going to take a break
Senator,
here and reset for the second hour of All Day Live. We have so many more live events. You wouldn't even believe it. We are up to our ears in live events and some really, really important information that we want to get to you here in the next hour or so. Minneapolis City Council on the impacts of Operation Metro Surge on Minneapolis police. Also in Hennepin County, we're going to keep following what's happening in federal court with our Paul Bloom and the U.S. attorney who has been called to testify. And what the judge has said to him, we're not sure we've ever heard it before. Criminal contempt is what's being thrown out there, and the possibility of imprisonment is on the table as well. So we're going to talk about that and much, much more here when All Day Live continues.
If you want the biggest selection.
All right, welcome back to All Day Live, our second hour of live coverage of events. So much going on today. We'll take you back to St. Paul first because there are a lot of things happening. We are following, and we can maybe put up some of the different things. So we're watching, top left, you're seeing the Committee of the Whole. That's the Minneapolis City Council, where they right now are still talking about extending an eviction, pre-eviction notice from 30 to 60 days. And a little bit later, we expect that they were going to be talking about the impacts from Operation Metro Surge on Minneapolis PD as well as Hennepin County. And then the next box over is higher ed. This is a committee that we anticipate we're going to hear from, who had a working group look at enrollment fraud in higher education, specifically things like ghost students, if you've heard that term, fraud when it comes to financial aid, some students getting financial aid that shouldn't have. How did that affect other students who should have gotten it? And then also we're following House Education Committee that is talking, just kind of presenting their organizational funding overview. So we'll see if we can get to that one. But also the House Higher Ed Finance, I believe it is looking at the possibility of naming a community solar garden after the late Speaker Melissa Hortman from the House. So that's what's happening. That's kind of the red zone that we're watching right now. And Ryan, let me know which one you want to dip into here. Okay. So let's go into that House Higher Ed Finance and the discussion about the solar garden and the discussion over whether or not to name this after former Speaker Emerita Melissa Hortman. Let's listen.
Wanting to come up with a solution. And so I love that on her Twitter handle that she defined herself as a speaker, a member of the Minnesota House, and author of the Community Solar Garden and Solar Standard. And so these were accomplishments that happened under her leadership that she really felt strongly about. I think she traveled the country and honestly the world talking about the Community Solar Garden program, and many others have modeled their programs after the program that was started here in Minnesota. So our researcher went back and got me the clips from the floor debates when they passed the Community Solar Garden Bill in 2013, and it was really fun to watch and see some familiar faces. I think that Steve Simon was presiding over the House that day, and Erin Murphy was on the House floor, and she in Melissa's comments, she referenced that session that Bob Eloff worked really, really hard. And we know that Bob works hard every session, so I'm glad that that's the way it's always been, even back in 2013. But passing the Community Solar Garden Bill was not only important to expand access to solar to so many, but it really sent a signal to the Community Solar Garden, the solar garden, or the solar industry, I'll get it right. It really sent a signal that Minnesota was open for business, and it really started what has become a thriving solar industry in our state. And I think that's evident by so many of the members of that industry that are here today. And I don't want to go much further. I know they're going to talk a lot about the impacts on the industry, and so I will leave them to do that. And I think, Mr. Chair, there's a list of speakers, so maybe we can turn it over to our testifiers.
Yeah, thank you, Manager. Just one housekeeping item. I think we need to move the bill at this point. Would you like to do that?
Oh, that's an important piece of this, isn't it? Yeah. I would like to move House File 3556 to the General Register.
All right, Chair, you can move House File 3556 to the General Register. Okay, we'll now have testifiers. First on the list is Katie Sieben. Welcome to the committee. Please introduce yourself and then proceed.
Do I need to turn this on? I don't think so. I think it's just on. Chair Acom, Chair Swedinski, members of the committee, Chair Kraft, thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today. For the record, I'm Katie Sieben, the chair of the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. Today, I urge your support of House File 3556 to rename the CSG program the Melissa Hortman Community Solar Garden Program, because it's a fitting tribute to Melissa Hortman's passion and dedication to a brighter, cleaner future for Minnesota. Melissa and I served together in the Minnesota House during the 2005 to 2007 sessions. But our friendship and collegiality continued over the next decade with conversations about civility, the patriarchy, our shared love of Walter Mondale, children, especially our own, unions, women's leadership in the C-suites, tribal engagement, recycling, and flowers, cementing our friendship as legislators and public servants. In the spring of 2013, as the energy omnibus legislation that contained this community solar garden program was moving through the House, I was serving as the Assistant Majority Leader in the Senate and was a member of the Senate Energy Committee. Senator John Marty worked closely with Senator Hoffman and other senators to pass, at that time, nation-leading solar energy policies. I remember being so proud of the trifecta's energy policies then, including the Community Solar Garden Program in that omnibus bill. Like Chair Acom, I listened to the archived recording, but of then Chair Hortman describing her legislation that would lead to the creation of the CSG program. I was struck, like has been stated here, again by hearing her voice. She was prepared, articulate without being argumentative, and effective at persuasion by her command of her favorite topic. Her leadership on energy, of course, didn't end when she ascended to higher positions. Becoming Speaker meant changing from being an advocate to being a leader, she said in an article from the Harvard Kennedy School. In our role as legislators, we are advocates for particular policies and causes.
All right, we are going to transition out of this particular hearing to a Senate Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee, where they are hearing a bill that would prohibit pet shops from selling dogs and cats. So let's listen in to that.
Consumer Protection Bill, I believe, has at its foundation basic fairness, transparency, and responsible commerce. At its core, it's seeking to address a problem in the pet retail marketplace, namely the puppy mill to pet shop pipeline is how we term it. Mr. Chair, it has been shown that these types of businesses, this business model, all too often depends on high volume commercial breeding operations, what we call puppy mills, that prioritize throughput over animal welfare, and in many cases leave Minnesota consumers with sick animals and significant financial loss. So, Mr. Chair, this bill prospectively seeks to draw a clear line going forward while respecting existing businesses and providing a reasonable transition for those that would like to transition to a different model. Mr. Chair, I think this bill is very, very good for Minnesotans because, like I said, it offers substantial consumer protection. It follows the model that we see in other states that shows that a lot of times these businesses are associated with, I said before, sick animals, hidden veterinary costs, and very opaque supply chains. Mr. Chair, it's important to know that the overwhelming majority of pet industry revenue in Minnesota already comes from pet food, grooming, boarding, training, veterinary services, and adoption partnerships, which this bill speaks to. It does not eliminate consumer choice, does not ban responsible breeders who sell directly to the public, does not prevent rescue adoptions, does not shut down existing stores. Instead, it prevents the expansion of a retail model that has been shown to be problematic. It encourages growth in pet products and service-based retail. It aligns Minnesota with quite a few local jurisdictions that have taken this step in Minnesota already, as well as a number of other states that have chosen to protect consumers. And Mr. Chair, it shows that the pet supply retail sector continues to grow, even where these kinds of dog and cat sales are restricted. So just very quickly in summary, before Ms. Severson does a quick overview of the DE, it's a measured middle ground approach, grandfathers existing stores, allows them to be sold, strengthens transparency, prevents future expansion of the puppy mill retail model, and protects Minnesota consumers. With that, if you're amenable to turn our attention to Ms. Severson.
Thank you, Senator Dibble. Ms. Severson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. As Senator Dibble explained, the Delete Everything Amendment to Senate File 1943 is primarily technical and clarifying, but there are a couple of substantive changes I'll point out during the walkthrough. There are no changes to Section 1, which provides definitions for advertisement and pet shop. Section 2 requires certain disclosures. There's one change in Section 2 on page 2, line 15, Previously, the language required disclosure of publicly available inspection reports. That term publicly has been removed, as state inspection reports are considered non-public data under Section 13.643, Subdivision 6. The amendment does not make any changes to Section 3, which just provides some clarifying language related to choosing a veterinarian to treat an animal. The amendment adds subdivisions to Section 4 just to help with readability and to create a better organizational structure. Staying in Section 4, in Subdivision 4, starting on page 3, line 19, there was originally language that prevented the transfer of ownership of pet shops in order to continue operating under this subdivision. That language has been removed. Under the current language in the DE, the grandfathered pet shops may continue to operate even if they are sold. Staying in Section 4, page 3, line 26, now includes some clarifying language to reference state license numbers. Sections 5 and 6, which provide penalties and severability language, do not have any changes. And that's the entire amendment.
Thank you. And I think you said this during your summary, but I just want to call to members' attention that the A2 adds a grandfather clause that exempts operational pet stores, and that starts at 3.19. With that, we'll go to testifiers. We've got a big agenda today, so I'm going to try to hold you guys to 3 minutes apiece if you could. Mr. Zellhofer, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Chair Klein and committee members. Aaron Zellhofer, Humane World for Animals. This legislation takes practical, balanced approach that allows existing pet stores to continue selling puppies while preventing the expansion of a business model that depends on puppy mills. The data is clear. Puppy selling pet stores source from large-scale, inhumane commercial breeders that no Minnesotans would knowingly support. Some of these breeders are USDA licensed, but that does not mean humane or even adequately regulated. The federal standards allows for dogs to be kept in cages only 6 inches larger than their bodies on wire floors and bred continuously without limits. A 2025 Inspector General audit found that breeders cited for violations kept breaking the same rules and that USDA rarely took enforcement on action. No one needs a pet store to find the dog of their choice. Minnesotan families already adopt responsibly from shelters, and rescues are purchased from responsible breeders they can meet directly. Pet stores, by contrast, conceal their sources behind layers of brokers and paperwork that trace back to the same commercial operators the USDA failed to adequately police. In fact, public records confirm that breeders selling into the state have racked up roughly 40 violations in just 3 years with the most current data. I cannot overstate it, the preventative nature of this legislation. We are lucky to have a small number of pet stores in our state selling puppy mill dogs, but there is nothing stopping more stores from opening and perpetuating this broken model. The worst that could happen would be for a large-scale, high-volume, incredibly controversial puppy store chain like Petland to open in our state. These stores bring in a ton of animal welfare and consumer protection problems. Just look at the report from Florida in this last year. Slick sales, predatory lending, and sick puppy sales cost Floridians the tune of $25 million in just 1 year. Let's join 8 other states and over 525 localities across this nation, including 16 in Minnesota, in closing off our market to additional puppy mill stores. Our state will remain wide open to the booming $154 billion pet and product service market that the vast majority of pet stores, large and small, adhere to. This legislation is fair, carefully crafted solution that protects animals, consumers, and existing businesses alike. The values of our pet-loving state simply cannot be reflected by leaving our market wide open to puppy mill sales outlets. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zellhofer. Could you please make room for Michael Swanson? And Danielle Hyde, please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Danielle Hyde. I've had many jobs in animal protection since 2004. I was an animal care technician back at Tri-County Humane Society. I worked at a local vet clinic, was also an animal care supervisor and researcher at the University of Minnesota. Minnesota coordinator for Homes for Animal Heroes, and I'm currently the customer service supervisor at Tri-County Humane Society. I've spent several years as an animal care tech at a local vet clinic near Four Paws and a Tail in Blaine, Minnesota. I've seen countless sick puppies brought in from Four Paws and a Tail. To be honest, a lot of the vet clinics and the vet techs in the area privately refer to them as four tails and a paw due to so many health issues that have been seen with these dogs. The dogs have had parasites, upper respiratory infections, congenital birth defects, and a plethora of other health problems and disease often as well. All of which came from the puppy mills that they were bred at. Oftentimes in puppy mills, they're not provided proper vet care, husbandry, enrichment, or even basic human contact. Some people in Minnesota have spent upwards of $20,000 just in vet bills for these sick puppies that have been bought from a pet store. I've seen countless people have the same story. Consumers that would have to make a tough decision on whether or not they should spend thousands of dollars to get this puppy well enough to keep that they just purchased, or sometimes sadly having to euthanize due to whether financial constraints or the severity of the health issues. I knew these dogs would have continual health problems, and I couldn't do much at that time. The only thing I could do was let them know that their dogs did probably come from that puppy mill or from a puppy mill, and is the reason that they're having a lot of their issues. I would let them know that they should report it to the Attorney General. I would let them know they should go to the news, and some did. Some of the diseases that dogs can get from the puppy mill can take months or even years to show. This can't be addressed with the current statute that we have in place. From what I've seen, only breeders with sick dogs or something to hide would sell to a pet store for their litters. If you look close, it's very easy to see where these animals are coming from, and it's not reputable breeders that are supplying puppies to these stores. As I've learned, in the state of Florida, released a report stating that the puppy mills being sold in pet stores and deceitful pet sales practices that goes along with this has negatively impacted consumers to the tune of $25 million a year. Passing this law would help prevent more families from going through the heartbreak and financial burden of getting these sick puppies. And this is consumer protection. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Swanson, go ahead, introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Senate Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee. My name is Michael Swanson. I'm the owner of Four Paws and a Tail, a small franchise pet store in Blaine that has been a reliable supplier of pets to loving families in the metro for over 56 years. I'm here today in opposition to Senate File 1943 as this bill harms consumers, takes away consumer choice in where to purchase a puppy, and threatens the future of my business and the livelihoods of my entire team. Four Paws and a Tail is the last pet store in the metro area that offers puppies. We're a family-run business that has helped generations of Minnesotans find the right pet for their family. We provide a safe, welcoming environment where new pet parents can visit, ask questions, and receive guidance on choosing the right puppy. Every puppy we place comes with a free vet exam, a health guarantee, and a full transparency of its origins. We of course rigorously follow all of Minnesota animal welfare laws and work hard to set the standard for ethical and responsible pet placement. We have worked hard to build relationships with our breeders, many of whom are small family-run operations, and we take our responsibility to the animals and consumers very seriously. Senate File 1943, as amended, includes the so-called grandfathering provision that would allow existing stores to continue operating, but it offers no real security. The provision is legally shaky and would certainly be challenged by out-of-state retailers. The bill's grandfathering requirement still also includes breeder licensing numbers advertising that would also cripple my business. It would encourage consumers to bypass this entirely and go directly to breeders, which exposes those breeders, many of whom are of Amish faith and value privacy, to harassment from activists. It also creates unnecessary paperwork and does nothing to improve animal welfare. I already disclose breeder information to all buyers of my puppies as required by current law. The bill would also require me to only source animals from state licensed or USD licensed breeders. and this would also harm me by cutting off access to small mom and pop breeders where I source some excellent puppies. This kind of legal and regulatory instability makes it incredibly difficult for me to plan for the future, support my employees, and continue serving our community. It sends a message that our small business doesn't belong, even after decades of responsible operation. The global organization Humane World for Animals, formerly known as HSUS, has made it clear they have a personal agenda against my store, regardless of the care and transparency we provide. This bill unfortunately plays into that agenda at the expense of small businesses and Minnesota families seeking safe, trusted options as to where to buy a puppy for their family. This bill is anti-consumer choice for those who choose a pet store rather than trying to find a breeder or other random online seller of puppies. Please consider the real-world impact that legislation will have, not just on me, but on my employees, our customers, and the animals we care for every day. I urge you to oppose SF 1943. Thank you for listening to my concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Swanson. Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Swanson, there was some testimony that there had been 40 complaints over the last 3 years, and there was also testimony that there's a high volume. So I'm trying to get some perspective on just how many complaints the USDA has received. Can you estimate for this committee how many animals, dogs and cats, you sell every year?
Mr. Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the Senate Commerce Committee. On average, 1,200
per
about
year?
100 a month.
Okay.
Senator Frentz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I guess my concern here is the Commerce Committee's interaction with our small business community. I think we have to try to make a level playing field, but we have to encourage business. I'm unfamiliar with the health issues that come with puppies. I see the material here. 1,200 over 50 years. You're talking about 70,000 animals, and there are 40 complaints from the USDA. So I'm asking members of the committee just how much of an issue is here. I don't know because I'm not in the business. I'm very interested in small businesses succeeding and in feeling like the state of Minnesota will stick up for them. I'm willing to send this to Judiciary, Mr. Swanson, but I want you to know you have my ear on this bill and my interest in finding out what is the sweet spot. And Senator Dibble, you know you have my respect, so I'm a yes vote today. But the grandfather clause part, I think, is successfully taken care of. I still have questions about the disclosure and the larger picture of are we a place that people want to do business in this state? I think we should be, and where there's a need for regulatory reform, that's fine. But I'm a little unclear just how big of a problem this is, and I'm especially unclear whether this is about putting one particular business out of business, which I really, really do not like and would like to know a little bit more. So with that, Mr. Chair, I appreciate the chance to ask these questions. I'll be a yes to send it to Judiciary, and I encourage the parties to have further conversation. Thank you.
Senator Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be a no on this, but I do have some questions, and maybe
we'll be right back.
The one testifier, Mr. Zollhofer, if I pronounce that right. You've got 40 complaints. You held up a papers that looked like it came right out of a ream. So these complaints are either very
All right, let's take you back to the state capitol. A bill that would prohibit pet shops from selling dogs and cats. In Minnesota, we are hearing testimony. Let's listen in.
That they're breeding. And I mean, many of them have upwards of 50, 100, 300 dogs. They're typically stacked in cages. Puppy or mom and dad breeding dogs, all stacked together, frequently kept out in the barns and whatnot in the communities that they're in. So just a massive amount of dogs and puppies that are just churning out puppies constantly.
Senator Green.
So the definition of a puppy mill is somebody who's got a barn with dogs stacked in cages. How many of those are in Minnesota, do you know?
I know that there's sadly a pretty large amount in the state of Minnesota as well as Wisconsin and around the country.
Senator Green.
Well, Mr. Chair, I don't think that's much of an answer. I know they're out there, but I would think that that in itself would be a violation, and somebody would be in trouble if those are out there being used. So, I just think that this bill is a waste of time for what we're getting here. I would rather not see it move on and waste time in another committee in a short session.
Senator Rasmussen? No, Senator Rasmussen passed. Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate it. Candidly, I'm in a similar situation as Senator Frentz as it relates to this bill. That being said, I do have a couple of questions, if that's okay. Mr. Swanson, you and I spoke specifically about the issue that having to advertise certain information online would cause your business. Would you elaborate on that a little bit more and explain to us why that would, in your opinion, cause you some issues and whether or not you believe there is a solution there that is workable? I understand you do provide this information, maybe not online currently, but to customers at the time of sale. Do I understand that correctly, and could you give some more context, please?
So, Mr. Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Senate Commerce Committee. What happens is if I disclose that information on advertisement, it allows the consumer to go and look for my sources, and it'll circumvent me completely and go around and go directly to the breeders. Breeders the reason why they do business with me is to prevent, they don't want to work on the retail side. They don't want to have the consumer coming to them directly, harassing them or calling them and dealing with them. It protects them, and it also protects me and my store and keeps my business viable. And also losing the mom and pop stores, if there are mom and pop breeders that are just a small breeding facility, they have great dogs, they would probably go out of business also because they wouldn't be able to source the consumer like I'm able to.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Swanson. I appreciate that. The other issue I understand, and again, maybe this is something that you can expand upon a little bit. You shared that there might be mom and pop shops that you get dogs from to sell, and that this bill would require some licensing issues that may pose an issue for you or for them. Could you expand upon that a little bit more? Maybe give us an idea of how much of the animals come from these smaller mom and pop shops versus those who might already have some sort of state or federal certification, please.
Mr. Swanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would fair to say probably 25% of the puppies come from the unlicensed breeders, and I go and visit those kennels myself personally and verify that they're taking care of their dogs correctly, that the vaccination procedures are being followed, and they're just being well cared for. The mom and dads are well cared for. I just go out there and vet and make sure everything is good. And these people have their livelihood on it. Some of them are Amish families, and they do a great job, and it would definitely devastate their livelihood.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Senator Duckworth.
Thank you. So is it my understanding, and I applaud Senator Dibble and others that have worked on this and Senator Frentz for his amendment that I think provides a much more generous grandfather clause that didn't exist before and improved the one that was crafted. Mr. Swanson, if these two additional things are continued to be worked on and addressed in a way that you find to be somewhat workable or satisfactory, would that get you to find the bill to be more favorable? That's all I've got,
Mr. Swanson.
I would like to see how it would be written, and if we can agree to terms, yes, I would be open to looking at it and making sure that it protects my family and my business.
One more question, Mr.
Senator
Chair. Thank you. And Senator Dibble, hearing that information out here in the open publicly, is that something that if this bill were to move on, you could commit to continuing to work on, as I know you have been? And Mr. Swanson, this would require you to communicate and work with them as well. Is that something that you'd be willing to continue to explore and try to find some sort of a resolution specific to this case?
Senator Dibble.
Senator Duckworth, thank you very much. I would welcome that. I and the proponents have been very open to speaking with Mr. Swanson and his representative. They have declined to meet with us for over a year. I'll also add that Mr. Swanson is representing that 25% of his business comes from unlicensed dealers. 2 years ago, he said all of his business came from licensed dealers. So we've got changing representations, changing facts. He made representation that he has gone and checked out a dealer in the past that was perfectly fine. Subsequently, we find out that that dealer has numerous violations. So I'm very willing to sit down with Mr. Swanson, work through what makes sense. Mr. Macbeth is representative, as we have indicated for a year, to work this out. But I think we will hang on to that basic value that supply chain transparency and consumer protection is a core value that we bring to this proposal. We want his business to continue to thrive. We also want people who are buying pets, they're spending $1,500 to $5,000, actually are going to be healthy and stable and sound and good members of their family.
Mr. Chair, Senator, I'm not going to ask any more questions because I'm trying to take a step forward, not a couple back. So you're all in the same room
All right,
here today.
so we continue to listen to testimony here, some back and forth over a Senate bill that would prohibit Minnesota pet stores from selling dogs and cats. We will keep listening to this. We're going to take a quick break and come right back with more on All Day Live. Stay with us. And welcome back to All Day Live. We're glad that we have you with us here as we are at about 1:37 in the afternoon. We're going to take you back to the state capitol to check back in on some of those live hearings that are happening. But we have an opportunity to check in with our Corin Hoggard, who, in addition to covering the items at the Capitol, is also going to be covering something for us in a little bit. We wanted to preview that. So, Corin, thanks for popping in here. Appreciate it.
You got it. I'm not as exciting as cats and dogs, but
I mean, that was getting juicy. We'll get back to that here in just a minute. A lot of testimony to come, but we wanted to bring you in because there's something that's happening here, some sort of a press conference in about 20 minutes or so. Tell us about Harvey's Law. What is this about?
Sure. This is a bill that will be brought forward by Representative Nolan West. So kind of setting this up, last year he brought forward a lot of bills regarding daycares and mainly trying to make sure that parents and some others kind of had access inside of a daycare to make sure their kids were safe. And that was because his daughter, Representative West's daughter, was one of the victims of some abuse at the Small World Learning Center in Blaine back in late 2024. And so he's very invested in this. He didn't get everything he wanted last year as far as surveillance inside of daycares. And he's coming back today. He's got one bill that would kind of expand that surveillance inside of daycares. And then Harvey's Law is named to honor the victim who was killed at a daycare in Savage. I think it was early this year, late last year. And so this is another bill that we don't have a lot of details about yet. It actually hasn't been presented, but I've talked to Representative West a bit, and it sounds like it's another bill that would expand parents' access inside of daycares to make sure their kids are safe. Now, there are some concerns that kind of kept him from getting a lot of these measures that he wanted inside of daycares last year. And the main one is privacy issues.
Sure.
Those are also connected to some artificial intelligence concerns, a notification. It's a pretty common thing now, unfortunately, where apps will allow you to take whatever pictures or video you have, and they can generate, fake images and fake videos. And the only way that a lot of them can get this kind of an input there, it's hard, according to the opponents of what Representative West is proposing, it's hard for people to notify images and video of children because they don't typically have access to it. But if they have access to daycare surveillance cameras, they're very concerned that this is what might be generated from it. So they're proposing a task force to have some of the best kind of cybersecurity experts and lawyers go through this and make sure that they can cut out anybody who wants to do things like that.
Okay. Wow. Gosh, so many layers, things I hadn't even really thought of. So that's really interesting. So coming up at 2, and then you'll wrap that up for us a little bit later today on the newscast. Thanks for checking in, Corin. Appreciate it.
You got it. Now let's both watch Cats and Dogs.
Yeah, you know what? And they're done with the cats and dogs, Ryan. Just let me know. They were just wrapping up. But, Corin, the next item that they're talking about, this is a bill that would prohibit pharmacy manufacturers from advertising prescription drugs on TV. Interesting thought.
I don't know if you've watched like Peacock during the Olympics. I was watching a lot, and that was the first time I'd seen commercials in a while, and almost all of them are for pharmaceuticals. So I don't know what the ad industry would be doing without them.
Right, and scary movies sometimes. You could get rid of the scary movie trailers too during like sporting events. I think maybe let's focus on that. All right, Corin, appreciate it. We'll talk to you a little bit later. All right, so let's take you back into that Senate Commerce and Consumer Protection Committee hearing. Again, they are now talking about a bill that would prohibit pharmacy manufacturers from advertising prescription drugs on TV. Let's listen.
To try to address the cost, because you look at the state's impact of the pharmaceuticals, it's quite a bit. So I guess I'll just close with this. We have to debate the social impact of the benefits of having the information out there of what is an option for people with the cost. And if we look at the billions of dollars spent on advertising the pharmaceuticals, billions every year. And most experts would argue that 25% of the money spent by the pharmaceuticals is spent on marketing. Could we reduce that? Could we reduce that marketing dollar? And in theory, would that be passed on to the consumers? Those seniors that are constantly at battle with their prescriptions and trying to afford the medicine they need to have a healthy lifestyle. So I could go on for another 10 minutes here, Chair. I have quite a bit of information, but I know my minute's up.
Senator Draheim, and I know you have a testifier, and I'm sure the committee is eager to discuss the subject. Let me just ask you one question before we get to the testifier, because I'm sympathetic with your concern. And I think billions of dollars in advertising from pharmaceutical manufacturers is absolutely passed on to Minnesota consumers who need life-saving and essential medications, and we need to curb that. That said, we're the Commerce Committee. What right do we have to sort of restrain a corporation from spending their dollars in the way they see fit or advertising to the public in accordance with free speech principles?
You know, thank you, Chair, and committee members. Thanks for your time. And I know some of my friends here have been rubbing me a little bit about this bill and that same argument. And I think we have to decide, is the marketing for the pharmaceuticals a commercial tool, or is it speech? And that's something that I'm sure my attorneys on the committee would love to debate and spend more time on. I personally think that advertising and marketing for that is more of a tool and not the expression of free speech. But I know it's been debated for years, since the tobacco ruling back in the 60s. So it's not an easy answer. I know this is a big lift. I just wanted to broach the subject before I left, trying to throw a Hail Mary out there that hopefully one of you that are going to be here next year will carry the torch and look at the cost of pharmaceuticals and what can we do to lower that for especially seniors that are on fixed incomes, that are constantly battling their kind of gap coverage policies on trying to pay for their medicine.
Well answered, Senator Draheim, and it's a good point that we do regulate advertising by tobacco and alcohol companies in the public interest. So there's a precedent for doing that. We'll go to your testifier, Jessica Lynch. Ms. Lynch, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, Chairman and members. My name is Jessica Lynch, and I'm here representing Pharma. Pharma represents the country's leading innovative biopharmaceutical research companies. I am here in respectful opposition to Senate File 3650 as amended. Senate File 3650 would now prohibit prescription drug advertising on TV or streaming service to Minnesotans. We oppose Senate File 3650 for two primary reasons. One, we believe it will be harmful to patients, and two, it also raises serious constitutional concerns, as Chairman Klein has already mentioned. I'll also address the cost of care briefly because that's been a point of conversation today. Direct-to-consumer ads help raise awareness about symptoms and treatments. They also help patients have more informed talks with their doctors. A recent Princeton survey showed that 79% of respondents agree that these types of ads help them make more informed decisions in their health care. Senate File 3650 also raises serious free speech concerns and would likely be unconstitutional. The Supreme Court has said that drug advertising is protected speech, and laws that target specific content face strict review by courts. I would also note that most drug ads are created nationally or regionally and not within the state of Minnesota. So as noted today, Senate File 3650 would likely impact advertising coming from outside of the state of Minnesota, which also creates additional constitutional problems. We too at Pharma are concerned about the out-of-pocket costs that patients are paying for their medicines at the pharmacy counter. The average net price growth for brand medicines projected into 2028 is supposed to decrease by 1 to 4%. But patients aren't feeling these savings because these savings aren't being passed down at the pharmacy counter. Manufacturer patient assistance totaled $23 billion in 2023. And as a matter of fact, spending on brand drugs represents just 7% of healthcare costs in the country. On the other hand, hospital costs represent 50% of healthcare. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Go to questions from the committee. Senator Rest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Draheim, I love your bill. And it's probably not going to go anywhere, but I wonder if you would permit me to become a co-author.
Senator Graham.
Chair, thank you. I would be honored. Senator Rest, thank you.
And then, Mr. Chairman, I find some of the comments from Pharma to be very disturbing. I watch those ads, and they don't usually speak to what condition, medical condition, that some miracle drug is going to help people with. I feel that they take advantage of the fears of the people watching TV, and that the notion that this is a violation of free speech. Well, I associate myself with the argument that Senator Graham gave about not too much difference than when we forbid advertising or health announcements, whatever you want to call them, about tobacco products. I don't see any difference myself of any measurable amount, and so I really thank you, Senator Graham, for bringing this bill forward, and of course I'm joining you as someone who is leading, but I absolutely appreciate the opportunity to express my opinion on it by becoming your co-author. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Rasmussen.
Okay, we are going to take a quick break here on All Day Live, come back with a little bit more of live events. But before that, we also want to do a quick check of your weather. Not much to talk about other than it is absolutely beautiful outside. Here's meteorologist Keith Marler.
Looking at a beautiful day today as we work our way, and plenty of sunshine for the afternoon. Our morning clouds have given up. We started off in the mid-30s. I mean, we didn't even freeze up last night. Getting warmer, high around 50 degrees today as we clear out to that afternoon sunshine. Southwest winds remain light. Midweek mellow is back tomorrow. 55 degrees for your high. We continue those middle 50s with patchy clouds into Thursday. We bring back the shower chance from Thursday night and into Friday. That's legitimate, just flat out liquid rain. Well, a couple of rumbles of thunder thrown in there for fun, question mark, but thunder showers, not thunderstorms. We might actually see some flakage come back in on wraparound moisture into late Friday night or early Saturday morning for parts of the viewing area. We'll see how cool that part of the atmosphere can get, but it's possible that we might start the day off with a very light or weak mix. Then partly sunny sky and highs in the upper 40s, and we spring forward Saturday night into Sunday as daylight saving time kicks off. Sun goes down on Sunday at 7:10, and with those last 2 days of the crescendo of warmth, we make a run for the upper 50s to near 60 on either Sunday and or Monday. It's possible. It's optimistic, yes, but it's possible going into the early days of next week.
And welcome back to All Day Live. As we wrap up the show here, just wanted to roll through and recap all of the different headlines that we showed you, many of them live events. We coming out of that hearing where they were talking about pharmaceutical companies and not advertising, that same Senate committee also talked about pet shops and whether or not pet stores in Minnesota should be banned from selling dogs and cats. So that was another one that was at play today. Senate Labor Committee talked about a stay or pay ban. This was a bill that would make it illegal for an employer to force an employee to pay back money spent on hiring them. So they bring you in, they spend some money on that, and then you might have to pay that back, is what the contract terms are for some people, if you leave before a certain time. So you're not there for 6 months or a year or whatever, you have to pay that back. This bill would get rid of that. So that is something that was talked about today as well. We also, I don't think we got to it, but a big impact bill, a constitutional amendment is being proposed by State Senator Zainab Mohammed of St. Louis Park that would increase the sales tax, the general state sales tax, by 3/8 of 1%. So basically it comes out to 0.375% increase, and then that money would go toward housing projects. You might remember back in 2009, according to my very rough quick search here, it looks like 2009 was the last time Minnesota raised the statewide sales tax from 6.5 to now 6.875. So this would be another slight increase with that money going toward housing projects. That's making its way through today as well. Gas prices, looks like they went up about 11 cents overnight. AAA saying average price now $3.11. Of course, we're keeping an eye on everything that's happening in Iran. We saw Fox News, Trey Yingst, who is on the ground in the Middle East, saying that about 2 to 3 hours ago, Israel, according to Trey Yingst, actually struck a meeting of Iranian officials who were meeting to vote on the succeeding supreme leader. So that is the very latest from Iran. We know that the Iranian retaliation also continues, so we'll keep an eye on that. Let's see, Minneapolis City Council, a lot going on at City Council as well. That probably still going now, but we talked about a discussion to extend that temporary pre-eviction notice timeline from 30 to 60 days, meaning that landlords in Minneapolis would have to give a 60-day notice, not just a 30, but a 60-day notice upon eviction, because coming out of Operation Metro Surge, council members saying that a lot of people have been affected and are at risk of losing their ability to stay in their home. A couple more things here before I grab Ryan and bring him in here. Let's see. Oh, Paul Bloom, working on this today. You guys, this is a really, really big deal. I mean, we're calling it unprecedented because I don't think any of us have heard this before. The U.S. Attorney for Minnesota, Daniel Rosen, the state's top prosecutor federally, was called to testify before a federal judge this morning. Criminal contempt is what this judge is saying. The judge basically saying that the U.S. Attorney's Office has not complied with an order to return property that ICE took away from people who were unlawfully detained. So these people are then released and their things aren't with them. It got really, really heated in court today. In fact, that judge actually threatening putting imprisonment on the table as well. So we'll work through some of that with Paul Bloom, and he'll have much more coming up a little bit later. Ryan, you want to hop in here with the last minute and a half that we have to talk about what's going on in St. Paul with the Wild today?
There I am. Minnesota Wild and the city of St. Paul have come together with kind of a framework on a deal that would pay for renovations at Grand Casino Arena, River Center, and then Roy Wilkins Auditorium. The whole package is about $600 million. They want to ask the state to cover about a third of that, and then the city of St. Paul wants to extend a sales tax that's already in place by 0.5%, extend that to help pay for about $162 million of it, and the Wild would cover the rest. So when Wild owner Craig Leopold asked what those renovations would be, it would be a lot of the behind-the-curtain stuff, new HVAC system, some new wiring. But they did talk about expanding the restrooms and making them bigger. So That would be one fans would like. So
that's probably the thing you notice the most. A lot of it is just kind of that stuff that's you're not going to really notice, but important. HVAC's important, right?
It is, and it's a 25-year-old arena, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, sounds great. We're wrapping here. We got to get going. Thanks for being with us today. All of our live events, we appreciate it, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great day.